Hello there, faithful listener. You've tuned in to Season 7 of the Bible Explained podcast. So make sure to grab your cup of coffee because today we are going to be discussing the book of 2 Samuel. Hey, good morning, faithful listeners. Hope you all have had a fantastic weekend. Let me know what you guys did over the weekend and how the weather was. I love hearing from all of you. I love hearing how you found the podcast and where you guys live and what the weather is like. When I was a little kid, you know how every kid wants to do something when they grow up? I wanted to be a weather woman. That was my goal as a child, was to be a weather woman. And I'm still interested in weather to this day. In fact, I listen to the weather and I like hearing what's going on around the country. So yeah, weather is very interesting to me. Tell me how the weather is where you are. And also, if you have any prayer requests, shoot them my way and I will pray for you for the week. Faithful listeners, let's go ahead and read 2 Samuel chapter 20, verses 14 through 26. We will finish up this chapter today. And we are going to talk about the difference between wisdom, knowledge, and discernment. So that is the topic for today. I'll be reading this portion of scripture from the WEB version, but feel free to grab the version of the Bible that you prefer. He went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel and to Beth Maacah and all the Berites. They were gathered together and went also after him. They came and besieged him in Abel of Beth Maacah, and they cast up a mound against the city, and it stood against the rampart. And all the people who were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. Then a wise woman cried out of the city, "Hear, hear! Please say to Joab, 'Come near here that I may speak with you.' He came near to her, and the woman said, 'Are you Joab?' He answered, 'I am.' Then she said to him, 'Hear the words of your servant.' He answered, 'I'm listening.' Then she spoke, saying, 'They used to say in old times, they shall surely ask counsel at Abel.' And so they settled a matter. I am among those who are peaceable and faithful in Israel. You seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Why will you swallow up Yahweh's inheritance?" Joab answered, far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. The matter is not so, but a man of the hill country of Ephraim, Sheba the son of Bichri by name, has lifted up his hand against the king, even against David. Just deliver him, and I will depart from the city." The woman said to Joab, "Behold, his head will be thrown to you over the wall." Then the woman went to all the people in her wisdom. They cut off the head of Sheba the son of Bichri and threw it out to Joab. He blew the trumpet, and they were dispersed from the city, every man to his tent. Then Joab returned to Jerusalem to the king. Now Joab was over all the army of Israel. Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the Cherethites and over the Pelethites. Adoram was over the men subject to forced labor. Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud was the recorder. Sheva was a scribe, and Zadok and Abiathar were priests. And Ira the Jerite was chief minister to David. So if this is the first episode you've ever tuned into, you're probably like, what the heck is going on right now? You'd have to go back and listen to Friday's episode to really get the gist of what is going on. But just so everybody's on the same page, what happened on Friday's episode was David was finally being accepted back as king because the people of Israel pushed out David because they wanted somebody new, they wanted somebody better, and it turned out that David's son Absalom was charming and handsome, and Absalom didn't like David very much. So he tried to gain control of the throne through nefarious means, and it actually worked. And Israel ended up pushing out David and anointing Absalom as their king. But that didn't work out for Absalom. He actually ended up dying in battle, trying to kill his own father, but it didn't work out for him. So that's the gist of that. But after Absalom died, the Israelite people were without a king, because they had anointed Absalom. So they're like, you know what? David wasn't actually that bad. Let's bring David back in to the city. But now Israel is kind of divided from all of this. Half of Israel doesn't really like David. And also the tribe of Judah, which should have been part of Israel, has now become its own entity. So it's almost as if Judah and Israel are becoming separate states. So Judah is in huge support of David, but Israel is divided over whether or not they like David. So now Israel and Judah are kind of in this weird cold civil war over David. So all of this tension as David is coming back into the city culminates. And this guy named Sheba, who was the son of Bichri, who was a Benjamite, ends up trying to gain power throughout all of this. So Sheba is like, you know what, Israel, we don't like David. Follow after me. I will be a better leader than David would be. And Israel actually does it. Israel, for the most part, pretty much abandoned David all over again and decided to follow after this guy, Sheba. And this is like minutes, basically, after David comes back into Jerusalem. Like David was there for like a second before all of this happened once again. So now David, of course, was really concerned and worried about this new situation that pops up the second he gets back into Jerusalem. So he sends his commander out to try to kill Sheba, because Sheba was on the run from David, trying to gather an army against David. And David was very concerned that Sheba was going to make it to a fortified city before his army has a chance to confront Sheba and kill him. And that's actually what ends up happening. So there's another little story that's kind of thrown in here where Joab, who was originally David's commander, had been fired from the role because David didn't really like Joab very much, it seems like. And David actually appointed somebody else as his commander named Amasa. And Joab ends up killing Amasa and taking control of the military once again. And so all the people were following after Joab as well. So that's another story that's thrown in here. So Joab is back being the commander of the army because he killed David's commander and was just like, you know what, I am the commander, and there's nothing David can do about it. And really, you know, Joab, he was related to David. They were cousins. And also Joab had a big reputation with the people. The people really liked Joab. So Joab could kind of get away with whatever he wanted to do. And that is how Joab got away with doing that and just taking control of the military once again, basically. But anyway, that's kind of like a little side story of what happens there. So Joab is once again in charge of David's army. And Joab goes out to try to find this Sheba guy and destroy him. But Sheba makes it to the fortified city, just as David was afraid that he would. It says that Sheba ended up getting to this city called Abel of Beth Maacah. Now, Abel of Beth Maacah was a very northern city in Israel. So I'm sure that Sheba thought that he would be safe in this city because he was among his Israelite brothers and sisters. And also, he probably thought Joab is not going to attack an Israelite city, so I am safe in this fortified city. But what Sheba didn't realize is how ruthless Joab could be. So Joab also makes it to this city, and he figures out that that is where Sheba is. And meanwhile, as Joab is making his way up to this city, he's gathering more and more troops. It says that Joab went through all the tribes of Israel to Abel, to Beth Maacah, and to all the Berites. They were gathered together and went also after Sheba. They came and besieged him in Abel of Beth Maacah, and they cast up a mound against the city and stood against the rampart, and all the people who were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. So Sheba does not understand how Joab is. And if you've been reading through 2 Samuel, you will know how Joab is. He was very willing to get his hands dirty in order to accomplish a goal that he had. He was unafraid. So Joab is like, all right, whatever, just an Israelite city. Let's take down the walls. We are going to destroy the city in order to get this Sheba guy. Now, Joab's army was very big at this point in time because there still was a lot of people who were loyal to David. So Joab was able to gather probably thousands of Israelite people to help destroy this one city. So Joab was probably like, it's not going to take us long to tear down the walls of this city. So that is what Joab works at doing. Now, a wise woman was in this city, and we don't know who she is. She is not named, but it just says that she was a wise woman. And she cried out of the city, "Hear, hear. Please say to Joab, come near here that I may speak with you." So very likely this woman was either in the gates of this city or she was at the top of the wall calling down to Joab. And she says, please let me speak to Joab. I have something very important I need to say to him. So Joab listens. He comes near to the woman, and the woman said, are you Joab? And he answered, I am. So she says to him, hear the words of your servant. And he answers, I am listening. Now, this is why we know that this is not the same wise woman that was talked about several chapters ago, because that wise woman several chapters ago knew Joab, whereas this wise woman did not know Joab. So it's not the same woman, just to throw that out there. So this woman didn't know Joab, but she was wise. And I ended up looking up the difference between wisdom, knowledge, and discernment. Some people can have a lot of wisdom, but not have a lot of discernment. And a lot of people can have a lot of knowledge, but not have a lot of wisdom or discernment. So the difference between knowledge and wisdom, knowledge is just how much you know, how much you've been taught, how much information is stored in your brain. Wisdom is when you are able to effectively apply the knowledge that you have. And that often is a very good thing, though it's not always a good thing. Jesus actually says that there are evil people in the world who are wise in the ways of the world. So wisdom does not always equal good, just to throw that out there. But the difference between wisdom and discernment, wisdom is how you apply the knowledge that you have, whereas discernment is when you might not have knowledge, but you can feel in your spirit that something is just not quite right. You have the gift of judgment given to you by God. So discernment is different from wisdom, because discernment means that you might not have the knowledge of why something is wrong, but you just know that something is not quite right. So that is the difference between those three things. So this woman was a wise woman, and she was wise in a good sense. She was able to speak to Joab in a very convincing way to get Joab to actually listen to her. And this woman must have been very smart, must have had a very high IQ in order to converse with Joab. And so she thinks up a plan. And the first step of her plan is to remind Joab that this is an Israelite city that he is tearing down. She says to Joab, they used to say in old times, they shall surely ask counsel at Abel. And so they settled a matter. So she's like, look, this city that you're tearing down is very important to Israel. In fact, many counselors used to come to this city to sort matters out. This is an important city in Israel. She says, I am among those who are peaceable and faithful in Israel. She says, look, this city that you're tearing down, not only was it an important city in Israel, but also we are peaceable. We are not trying to fight against you, so don't fight against us. She says, you seek to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. So why will you swallow up Yahweh's inheritance? Now, another thing is this woman is also quoting something that Deborah quoted many, many years before this, back in the book of Judges. Deborah, who is one of the judges of Israel, one of the first judges actually, called herself a mother in Israel. So this woman is taking Joab basically back to the roots of Israel's history. She says, look, this city is important to Israel. It's peaceful. It's a good city. It's a mother in Israel. And she's reminding Joab of all of these things. So she said, why would you swallow up Yahweh's inheritance? We are also part of Yahweh's inheritance, so why are you trying to destroy us? Joab answers, far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. That is old-fashioned language to say, that is not what I want to do. So Joab is like, no, I do not want to destroy the city. That is not my goal. That is not my plan. But I am trying to find somebody who is treasonous against our king, King David. Now, one thing you can say about Joab is even though he was a wild card and he did whatever he wanted to do, he was always loyal. Not always to David, by the way, but he was always loyal to Israel for the most part. He hated treason. And Joab would do anything in his power to destroy somebody who was treasonous, whether it was against David or whether it was against Israel. So Joab, once again, was not afraid to get his hands dirty, especially if somebody was treasonous. So Joab hated treason. And that is why he was about to destroy this Israelite city, because they were basically hosting and protecting a traitor to Israel. So Joab is like, nah, that's not going to fly with me. Everybody in the city can die if they are protecting a traitor. But he says to this woman, you know, you guys have a traitor among your midst, a man of the hill country of Ephraim. His name is Sheba, the son of Bichri. He has lifted up his hand against the king, even against David. So just deliver him and I will depart from the city. So he says, if you guys can prove that you are not protecting a traitor and you give him to me, I will stop tearing down your walls. And so the woman says, his head will be tossed to you from up over the wall. So the woman goes back to the inner parts of her city, and she must have had a very good reputation because she was able to convince everybody in the city to kill this Sheba guy. And they listened to her. Verse 22, they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, and threw it out to Joab. He blew the trumpet, and they were dispersed from the city, every man to his tent. So this did not work out for Sheba the way he thought it would. He probably hoped that he would gain something from all of this. He probably hoped that he could just pick up where Absalom left off and get to this city, and Joab wouldn't try to tear it down, and there wouldn't be a wise woman in this city. Sheba probably thought, I am perfectly safe. But the thing is, God is the one who chooses a leader. He either chooses a leader for good, or he chooses a leader to bring judgment on a nation. And that is always God's decision. And God chose David. He was very clear from the beginning that he chose David. In fact, David was going to be the one who was related to Jesus. So God chose David. He did not choose Absalom, who was one of David's sons. He did not choose this Sheba guy. He chose David. So Sheba lost this fight. His head got cut off by the people and thrown down to Joab. And Joab did what he said he would do. He blew the trumpet and told his men to go home. And that is what they did. It says, Joab returned to Jerusalem to the king, and every man went to his tent in verses 22. Then to conclude this chapter, verses 23 to 26, it mentions some people here who David appointed as managers over certain things. Now, the first time we saw this was 2 Samuel 8, 15 through 18. And actually, the list is a little different from 2 Samuel 8. So a few people got fired. David fired some people. So the first person was Joab, who David tried to fire, but that didn't work out. But after Joab killed Amasa, who David put in Joab's position, David, it says, reinstated Joab over the commander of Israel. So David could not get rid of Joab, no matter how much he wanted to. It says that Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and over the Pelethites. Now, the Cherethites and the Pelethites were likely the people who were good at like bow and arrow and also slingshot, from my understanding. And then Adoram, he's a new guy. He was over the men subject to forced labor. And there definitely were some men who were subject to forced labor, either criminals or war criminals who basically just had a prison sentence. So this guy, Adoram, was like the warden of this prison. Now, Jehoshaphat, it says, is still the recorder, so he maintained that position. But Sheva is a new guy, so Sheva replaced Sariah as the secretary or the scribe. So for some reason, David fired Sariah and appointed Sheva in that position. And then Zadok and Abiathar were the priests. That's the same. And also this new guy, Ira the Jairite, was chief minister to David, or probably more likely a royal advisor, because David was in need of new advisors ever since what happened with Absalom, when David's initial advisors defected and decided they were loyal to Absalom. So that is 2 Samuel chapter 20, and we will be moving into 2 Samuel 21 on Wednesday. Because on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that is when I do an Old Testament episode, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I do a New Testament episode. So I do hope that you join in tomorrow for the book of Romans. We are flying through Romans. We are almost done with it, and we will be in the book of 1 Corinthians very quickly, coming up here in a couple weeks. So that is very exciting. But if you love this podcast, tell people that it exists. Word of mouth is the best way to spread a podcast like this one. Faithful listeners, I will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy listening, and God bless.